Welcome back to Lancast. This is part 2 of my interview with Josh Gerber, former state rep candidate. Before we get back into it, I want to recap a couple of things that were interesting to me about part 1 of this interview. Number 1 was our difference in opinion about Lancaster based on our background. Josh had grown up in a small town in Missouri, and coming here, the pace felt so much faster for him, and the way he described it, it sounded like how I felt moving to New York City, like this was big city life. But since I had actually lived in cities like that, New York, San Francisco, and San Juan, and I grew up in Northern Virginia, which is a very fast pace. So moving here, it kind of was like a slower pace. It was the closest thing to moving to a rural community for me. So that was an interesting contrast. Number 2 was his opinion of the Republican Party. He became very critical of it because of COVID, or he first became aware of some things he didn't agree with. Whereas I came from more an independent background, and the response to COVID, policy-wise, actually made me more sympathetic to the Republican Party. So that was an interesting contrast. Now, during the last 5 minutes of part 1, I asked Josh a specific question about a policy. I brought up this book written by Robert Bryce. It's called A Question of Power, Electricity and the Wealth of Nations. I highly recommend it. Very informative about how affordable energy is necessary to bring people out of poverty, and goes into some of the unintended consequences of some of our energy policies. So I brought up this book because I wanted to ask Josh's thoughts about big government. There's a section which talks about how during the FDR years, when he was implementing the New Deal, his policies broke up the corrupt holding companies that up to that point had a monopoly over electricity. And these policies helped bring electricity to the rural areas, which vastly improved the quality of life there. So my point in bringing this up was I had sort of made a false assumption that he, as a libertarian, would oppose this big government action, even though it clearly worked. But Josh's answer surprised me. He said, well, that's not big government. That's just an example of government working how it's supposed to. You know, it wasn't a unilateral decision by FDR. It was something that got voted on by elected officials before it was implemented. So then we segued into what his definition of big government is, which is the 3-letter agencies, the unelected permanent government, i.e. the deep state, if you will. And that's where we left off. So let's get back to it. So do you think that's fixable under our current model? Like, you know, why don't we just drain the swamp?
Well, first of all, Trump, I voted for Trump twice. Mm-hmm. And I was all behind drain the swamp back then.
Right.
But what I realized was he was lacking the competence to do it.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
And you know, I don't really want to talk about Trump.
Sure.
It doesn't really matter to me.
Right.
I think there's better candidates than him in the GOP that can do a better job, like Vivek Ramaswamy. If you hear me, Vivek, if this ever gets to you, I like you a lot. Please.
I thought he had a really good interview on Dave Smith.
Yeah, he's great. Yeah. So when we're talking, so you were asking me, can that be fixed? Absolutely. If Vivek would get in, and he uses the executive branch how he constitutionally is allowed to, he can slash all those alphabet soup agencies, and he can get something much more streamlined and much more effective, and save a ton of money, save a ton of taxpayer money, and save a lot of people their rights, because we are getting trampled daily by laws that weren't even voted on by Congress. Daily, every single day you go out, you drive, you do something, you know, you can get when you get pulled over, you're not wearing a ticket. Did Congress vote on that to be a law?
You mean a seatbelt?
Yeah, yeah.
And you get ticketed. Is that a national law?
It might not be a national law, but did the state actually vote for that, or is that a policy of the Department of Transportation?
I don't know. It's a good question.
And the fact that we don't know tells you there's something wrong. We just don't know. Like, I think some stats came out and said that for every day you're just going about your day, you've committed 4 felonies, and you don't even know it. Like on average, we commit 4 felonies a day and we don't even know it.
Well, Wait, where'd you hear that?
I would have to pull it up. I'd have to pull it up.
What would be an example of the 4 felonies you would do on a normal day? Like, I can't think of anything I did.
That's the scary thing.
Felonious.
Can you Google it?
Sure.
Can you Google it on the laptop?
Yeah, it's probably quicker on my phone.
I would say like Google something like committing felonies or misdemeanors without even realizing it.
This is what I need. I need my information guy like Joe Rogan has.
What's his name? Is it Elliot?
Elliot? Something like that. He looks up stuff for him. I need my own look-upper guy.
Yeah, I can't remember his name. But when I read that, I was kind of flabbergasted. I'm like, wow, we have that many laws on the book or policies on the book that are enforced by the police.
How many felonies does the average person commit each day?
There it is.
There's a short answer. 3 felonies.
3 felonies. Okay.
Okay. I'm trying to get details in this.
Yeah, we don't want any misinformation, do we? I definitely don't want to be accused of that.
Yeah, I don't know. Sounds like a little bit of a deep dive here. 3 felonies a day refers to the number of crimes committed by the average American now unwittingly committing because of vague laws. Oh, this doesn't really explain what I'm looking for. I don't know. When you come back, maybe we can talk more about it.
I would talk about it, yeah.
3 felonies a day. Huh. I have never heard of that. Oh, here's a Quora question. Does the average American really commit an average of 3 felonies a day? Let's see what the answers are here. See this book. No, I don't want to see the book. Yes, they do. I've read other answers on other threads that people with degrees in journalism... Oh, well, heck. If the people with the degrees said it must be true. Yeah, this is still not really giving me any answers. Okay, well, we'll table that topic.
Well, we can table it.
Yeah,
I probably shouldn't have brought up something
so
vague.
that's interesting. I'm going to look into that. Okay, so...
But the main question you're asking was, can it be fixed? And I honestly believe that if we would elect someone into the executive branch that knows the Constitution and knows that civil service protections don't matter if you're firing everyone... Like, because that's how they got Trump. That's how Trump said he was going to drain the swamp, and his advisors said, no, civil service protections. And the law says you can't fire someone because of their political biases, because you can't fire someone in the government just because they're a Democrat and you're a Republican. That's what that meant. It doesn't say anything about you can't fire everyone because there's a redundant agency. Like, in my opinion, and Vivek's opinion, a redundant agency is the FBI and the U.S. Marshals.
Sure.
Why do you need both?
I think we should at the very least defund those agencies a bit.
Well, I think we should completely get rid of the FBI. I agree with him. It's been over-weaponized, way over-politicized. Yeah. It should be cut off and let the U.S. Marshals take in the agents, the good agents, vet them out, and there should be no FBI. Let the U.S. Marshals take over. The people who do like the white-collar crimes in the FBI, let them go to the U.S. Treasury and work for the U.S. Treasury and be rid of it because it's been so weaponized.
Yeah, well, just remember Chuck Schumer warned that the CIA has 6.5 ways I can't remember how he put it, but they have ways of getting back at you. Like, yeah, I mean... I don't think JFK found that out.
Well, yeah, and so did his brother.
Yeah, that's true.
And when it comes to the CIA, I don't think that's constitutional either.
Right.
They don't even the CIA doesn't even report back to Congress.
Right.
So if they're not reporting back to Congress, I mean, how are they even able to function?
Yeah, I mean, who's gonna? Yeah, I think they do command a lot of fear. Like no one's brave enough to take them down.
Well, we've killed a lot of. I mean, the CIA has killed a lot of people.
Absolutely.
Not
just in this country, but yeah.
Well, the president of Panama, when the president of Panama said, no, I'm not going to listen to you. Have you read the economic or the? Oh, what's that book called?
Noriega just went to jail for a long time.
I'm talking about the president died in an airplane crash.
Oh.
Yeah. Stories from an Economic Hitman is the book.
Oh, yeah, I've heard of that book.
And it talks about how he basically went to Panama or he knows the person that went to Panama, and in one hand he had a gun, and the other hand he had like paperwork, and the president of Panama didn't sign the paperwork, and then a few weeks later his plane crashes and he's dead.
Yeah, I'm gonna put that book in my reading list.
It's very yeah, but any time you're talking about the United States government and how corrupt it is, and how all these letter agencies, the power that they have over us, you really should consider, who's really ruling your life, because it's not the people who you elect. We can continue to elect, Ryan Ahmet in the United States, or in the PA Senate, and we continue to elect, our state reps in the PA House. We can continue to elect our representatives at the United States Senate and United States House of Representatives. But do they really even impact our lives at all? No. Do they even vote on things that impact our lives? No. It's the bureaucracy. It's all the agencies that the Congress was so lazy to give them all the power and say, here, you do all of our work. We're going to create all these agencies, you create policies, and the state police force will enforce it by a gun. Because the truth of the matter is, if you don't listen to the police when they come and tell you that you're doing something bad, they have every right to shoot you. They have every right to shoot you if you're not listening to them, even though it's not even a law voted on by your representative. There's just something fundamentally wrong about that.
It's an interesting way to look at it. Never thought of that. I want to go into another topic, because I like the way you explained about the government policies of electrification. It's not really big government.
That's just the government working for once.
Yeah, no, I like that. I like it that the government can work. And interestingly enough, LBJ was also kind of involved. Yeah, I mean, he's not my favorite president, so I was surprised when I read that he was doing these good things. So he actually brought electricity to rural Texas. He was around a long time. He was in Congress during FDR, many decades before he became president. So I guess my point is, LBJ, it's an interesting contrast between what I had thought of big government policies. So that would be one that, you could say did a lot of good. On the other hand, the stuff he did in the 60s, well, this is interesting. I mean, it sounds like all really well intended, right? The, Economic Opportunity Act and the Great Society and all these social programs. I looked into this, and
the Civil Rights Act.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of this stuff had like the opposite effect of what was intended. Like I said at the beginning of the show, unintended consequences. Well, one of the things they were doing, they're trying to have this war on poverty. And as Reagan famously once said, we waged war on poverty back in the 60s, and poverty won. Yeah, so, he was trying to lift people out of poverty and help single mothers. And I guess what the net effect of what he ended up doing, it ended up, let me see if incentivize single mothers to remain unmarried. Mm-hmm. These welfare programs that he created. So there's some interesting statistics in this article from the American Conservative. It started out, when he took office, it said 25% of all black children were born out of wedlock, and then what is it? Many decades later, by 2015, nearly 72% of all American black children were being born to single mothers. And I mean, and the rates overall for all Americans has gone up a lot too. So, I don't know if you wanted to comment, but that's an example where, I think more libertarian principles would have benefited the country.
Not just libertarian, but, when the government decides that we're going to help people,
mm-hmm.
that really just tells the churches that they can lax off. We had churches, America had communities and churches and just all around great people who would just go out and help people. And in my opinion, the minute the government starts handing out, money, benefits, and all that stuff, that just makes the church be like, oh, well, the government's going to do it, so I guess we can lax now. I guess we can make our churches bigger and more beautiful and pay our pastors more, pay our secretaries more. And instead of it being an outreach, instead of our churches being an outreach and being a mission and being everything that God wanted our churches to be, what Jesus wanted our churches to be, it turns into an organization. It turns into, a money hungry organization, whether we want to talk about it or not. If I can, I want to segue back to my hometown.
Okay.
My church was small. Okay. The founders of my church, they built it from cinder block and wood from the Walmart that was being built 45 minutes away that a tornado hit. The founder of our church would take all their pickup trucks, drive 45 miles, get as many cinder blocks as they could, drive all the way back to Memphis, Missouri from Kirksville, Missouri, and they used the recycled Walmart cinder blocks to build the church that I grew up in. Okay, we didn't have money. So my church, when I'm talking about how, like when I go to my church, which I go to Crossroads in Mount Joy, it's a BIC church. When I look at it, I'm just like, wow, like so much. Like my kids have great Sunday school classes, the pastor gets paid so much that they won't even release how much he gets paid, which it's ridiculous. And they're talking about building a new sanctuary, and they have all these great programs that takes money, and my church is just measly, building made from, people who love God and wanted a church. And it's just such a huge contrast to me.
Have you ever been to an LCBC service? The music is absolutely amazing. Like
I'm not interested.
Okay,
I'm not interested in LC.
It's a non sequitur, but
I'm not interested. I am not interested in going to any LCBC church service because they place a premium on lights, fog, sound, and not on saving people's souls.
But it's an amazing rock concert show.
That doesn't save people's lives.
Okay, I'm going to push back for a second. What do you say to? I mean, maybe there's a lot of people listening to this podcast who might be atheist or non-Christian. They would see more of a government role in those things, or maybe, I don't know what.
Well, no, plenty of atheists value Christian outreach. Plenty of them, because just think about it. America wouldn't be what it is today if it wasn't for, America would not even be here if it wasn't for the Spanish conquistadors trying to spread the word, right. And whether you're an atheist or not, you have to respect the impact that Christianity has had on the northern hemisphere of the world, in the Western society. I don't care if you want to be bitter about it, you can be if you're an atheist and you're listening. If it wasn't for Christianity, if it wasn't for, godly people, we wouldn't be here. We would not be here. So you're just gonna have to swallow it. It's just the truth. But back to the government and how they just, the government just started throwing money everywhere and saying, we're going to help you do this, we're going to help you do that. It made the church lazy. It made the pastors lazy. It made the congregation lazy. Oh, we don't have to worry about it. I can keep all my money, and I don't have to give because, the government's helping the inner city. The government's helping, single women now. We don't need to help, Susan down the road who has a baby out of wedlock and her husband or her boyfriend died in Vietnam, or Korea. I just feel like the church just kind of got lazy when that happened. And people were like, okay, well now we really have to rely on the government.
Do you think that trend is reversible? Can they go back to, can you see it going back to where the church has a bigger role in society?
The church will not get back to the way it was as long as they are scared to lose their 501cs. if they are continue to be scared of losing their 501(c)s and they want to continue to be a business where your preacher gets paid more than the average congregational person there, it's not going to go back, because there's just too much money to be made in the American church. There's just too much, and the thing is about some of these churches nowadays, the pastor will only preach 1 or 2 Sundays. The lead pastor will only preach 1 or 2 Sundays a month, and they're making 3 figures. And the people who are supposed to be paying their 10% to the church, some of them people aren't even getting paid, the household medium, which is what, $62,000 a year. So it's like, it's such a money scheme to where they have no reason to want to take that the responsibility back. They just don't want to. And also, the government has it set up to where the more that they give, the more that those people will always vote for big government. So what do people think about Republicans? They think that they want to cut taxes, to the rich. So that means less and less revenue for the government to use, aka less money for them. So it'd be dumb for people that live in the inner cities to vote Republican, because that means they're going to lose benefits. So as long as the Democrats continue to just, hand out the money, the people in the urban cities, they have no choice. They're like, well, I have to keep on eating, I have to keep on living, so I'm going to keep on voting for these people, because these people have at least said, as long as you vote me in, you're going to get your money. You're going to get your stamps, your food stamps. You're going to get your welfare money. And the other party is, we're spending way too much money. We're $32 trillion in debt. We need to stop. Who in their right mind living in their city would vote Republican in that case? If you are getting food stamps every month, and you're getting $1,200 from the government every month, and you have state insurance, health insurance, because you live below the poverty line, why would you ever vote for a Republican?
Right. You've been incentivized to.
You've been incentivized for years, and the generations have been incentivized for years to not vote for anything but Democrat.
Yeah, and I don't see that trend reversing unless. What can you do about that? I mean, money talks, right?
Well, money talks, and did you see what happened in New York this week?
No.
Didn't see AOC getting heckled and all that, saying, shut down the border, shut down the border, shut down the border?
I may have heard something.
Okay, well, I'll fill you in. So, and I mean, it's going to happen here too. The more the border stays open, the more these people who are here for financial gain, because, I don't blame them. The people who are here for financial gain, they're going to continue to go to places where they can get paid more. And what's happening is, I think they said they're getting 10,000 migrants a week in New York City. There's nowhere to put them.
Right.
Nowhere to put them. But the government, the city is paying like $500 a night hotel rooms for these immigrants, these illegal immigrants. Yeah, and most of these immigrants, they get food stamps, they get a hotel room, and they get a cell phone upon arrival.
I don't see how that's sustainable.
It's not. And the mayor, the Democrat mayor, bravely said, look, this is going to destroy.
Oh, I did hear this.
This is going to destroy the city.
I heard the rant from the mayor. Yeah, the Democratic mayor. And somebody said, well, he sounds like Donald Trump.
He said it's going to destroy our city. And so, like, money talks, yes, but eventually, when is the camel's back going to be broken?
Right.
And I don't care when it happens, but eventually it's going to happen, and a lot of people are going to suffer. A lot of people are going to suffer. And like here in Lancaster, when I was at Broad Street, like at the government office in Lancaster City, I was doing like stuff for the campaign. I was like turning papers and stuff. that little park, by the government building, you know what I'm talking about, where the Rose Falls.
Yeah, a Ben's Park.
Yeah, So I've been in Lakeshore City, you know, and I've never really seen homeless people, or let alone people who just, you know, are sitting on benches and they look like they've been there for days. Excuse me. And there was like 60, 70 men. Just men.
The numbers have
wasn't
increased
women,
a lot.
it wasn't children, it was just men. Just chilling there. And I went in and I was like, what's with all the homeless people here? And like, oh, well, this is where they get such and such every week or something like that. So some kind of service. They get some kind of service, you know, from the city. And that's why they're there. And I'm like, okay, so our tax money is going to these people who are just, you know, chilling out. And what I notice about all of them is that they all have a smartphone. They all have a smartphone. And I'm like, so you have money for a smartphone. I'm guessing you have Netflix. I'm guessing you have Hulu. I'm guessing you have all these streaming services. But you're homeless.
And that's happening everywhere, too.
It's happening everywhere. Yeah, San Francisco, LA, you know, that's happening everywhere. People just want to live that way. People just want to mooch. I shouldn't say the word mooch. People want to live a life that way, get their food stamps, get their welfare money, and just kind of exist.
Well, not all of them.
Not all of them. No, you're right. Not all of them. I'm saying, like, I've watched interviews of homeless people in LA and San Francisco, like, oh, this is great. And they're like, here, there's a video. He's like, here, let me show you. And he opens up his tent, you know, unzips his tent. He has a TV in there, and he has Wi-Fi, you know, from his phone, hotspot from his phone. And he's like, I have Netflix, Hulu, I have this streaming service. And he's like, this is where I have all my food at, and, you know, this is where I live.
That sounds more like a kind of like a beach bum type of guy. Like, I wonder do you think that's representative of the majority of the homeless? Or like, people are making a conscious choice to live that way? I think there's, you know, an amount of people who choose to live that way. There's actually probably a lot of libertarians that choose to live that way. And then there's probably people who are there because they put themselves there, whether they're depressed, whether they lost their home, whether they gambled, you know, and they lost everything. There's veterans who just are not mentally there anymore. They're living on the streets. I mean, everyone doesn't take care of them.
Right, but should the government be the ones to take care of them?
Well, I mean, if you're a veteran, then you put something in. The government owes.
Yeah, but when has the government ever did anything right? I mean, we can talk about the electrification. We can talk about the electrification, all that happened way back. But like right now,
what do they do right now?
What do they do right now?
Not a whole lot. Certainly not since Biden.
You know, and also, I kind of liked what Vivek has said. I hate to go back to him. I kind of like what Vivek has said about, you know, allowing veterans to try experimental things to help them, like such as ayahuasca, such as what do you know what ayahuasca is?
No.
So it's an Amazonian. It's not hypnotic. What's the word I'm looking for? Psychedelic. Yeah. Yes. So like Vivek was saying, you know, for veterans, we should really look into psychedelics. For mentally ill people, we should really look into psychedelics, and, you know, giving them the right to try. You know, but the government's like, nope. You have to take this big pharma drug. If you had PTSD, and you had the choice between doing ayahuasca, which has been going on for like thousands of years in Amazon, or this big pharma drug.
Oh yeah.
And which would you pick personally? Which one would you pick? Would you pick something that's been used for 1,000 years?
Probably.
Or yeah, because who knows what's in that pill? You know, my mother is on. God, it was so hard to see it. She visited a few weeks ago, and she was showing me these pills she takes. She has like a huge handful of pills.
Mm-hmm.
And she's like, I take this pill because of that pill, and I take that pill because of this pill.
Yeah.
She's taking pills for side effects from other pills.
Oh yeah. Yep.
It's just crazy.
It's a perpetual thing.
So it's like
it's hard to get off.
So like, why do we think the government can solve all of our issues?
Well, I guess they can't.
And then that goes back to what we were talking about with LBJ and in the 1960s. And, you know, I'm sure a lot of people thought the Civil Rights Act was going to, like, put our country forward. And in a lot of ways it did. In a lot of ways it ripped the Band-Aid off that maybe we needed ripped off. But what did it do to the black family? Everyone talks about the unfairness of, you know, back in the 50s where, you know, don't cross the railroad tracks because the whites lived on one side, the blacks lived on one side.
Mm-hmm.
You know, don't cross railroad tracks. What people don't realize is that the black family in the 50s, say what you want, they might not have been living at the same standard as the whites, but the man went to work, the wife stayed home, the kids were taken care of, and they all lived with a one-income household. Just like the whites did. Just like the whites did.
Mm-hmm.
You know, the man went to work, and the wife stayed home. Okay? And when you just think about what the government did to the black family to incentivize women to have children out of wedlock, to then also a couple decades later to arrest a man just for smoking marijuana and putting him in jail for 20 years and then starting that perpetual cycle.
Right.
What the government, they always say they're here to help. They're here, you know, we're here for the little guy. But then you imprison the little guy. You know, and I just don't have any faith that the government really is here to help anyone.
Yeah, you gotta wonder why were those laws so strict? It doesn't seem well-intentioned at all.
And that was Reagan. War on drugs. That was Reagan. That was Reagan. That was, you know, two decades later. But back to like the nuclear family. You know, sure, we were segregated. Sure, it was awful. There was hatred. There was bitterness. There was no understanding for one another. But like, there's a reason why Martin Luther King was successful, because he was in a parallel economy of black ran neighborhoods and African American families thriving together. And, you know, and that's what made him. You know, he was from a thriving family. You know, and then when segregation happened, and then, you know, people were like, okay, well, we're all segregated now, but we're going to do this, and this, so that we're still kind of not segregated. And that created so much friction, so much anger. People started trying to, like, basically gerrymander their towns so that these houses were unaffordable and these slums were the only places. So that created more animosity. You know, I'm not saying the Civil Rights Act was a bad thing, but there was a lot of negative consequences to the Civil Rights Act. And one of them was the beginning of the end of the parallel economy, the parallel nuclear family of the African American people of this country. You know, Detroit in the 50s. I mean, have you watched the movie about Ben Carson?
No.
You should watch it sometime. You know, but he was raised by his mother. You know, the father wasn't there. But he went to school. There was responsibility for him to go to school. His mother worked. You know, like, they were still a family. You know, like, they were still family.
Right.
And when the Civil Rights Act happened and the desegregation happened, it just feels like it just kicked over, like, ripped the Band-Aid off. The flames got ignited, and for like the next the next 50 years, it was just a race war, basically. And we were just, our country and our ethnicities were just fighting each other, and the government was trying to help by imprisoning black men over and over and over again and creating fatherlessness to the point where no country probably has ever seen before. And the effects of a fatherless home is everyone knows it's bad.
Right.
Everyone knows it's bad. And because a young boy needs to know what discipline is.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not saying mothers can't discipline, they can, but traditionally that's been the father's role. They need to know discipline, they need to understand responsibility, and you can just see that, like, when that kid hits puberty, when that boy turns puberty, and he sees his mom working really, really hard just to support her family, and he knows that he can go down the road and sell drugs to help the family out, what's that young boy going to do with no guidance from a father? Right. He's going to feel like he's the man of the house, he has to provide, and he's going to skip school, and he's going to do that, and then he's going to get arrested. And then it just snowballs over and over and over again.
Yeah.
So I apologize for the rant.
No. It's a very interesting topic. I think we're going to wrap up soon because we've gone about an hour. So some closing thoughts. What's next for you, Josh, in terms of how you plan to make a difference in all these things?
Well, I don't know. I have realized that the Libertarian Party itself isn't going to be a vehicle to move anyone. So the likelihood of me becoming at least in paperwork, I'll be a Republican probably if I want to do anything else.
Mm-hmm.
If anyone calls me a Republican, then I'm going to be like, no, I'm a Libertarian. I'm just using this as a vehicle to do good. Because I am definitely not what a Republican politician or a Republican public figure would be. I'm for the Constitution. I'm for people's liberties, and I don't think the government should use force to force anyone to do anything. And Republicans have been notorious for that, and Democrats have been notorious for that. So I plan on going local. I plan on impacting the place around me. And what I really plan to do is bring up, I have 4 children. I have 3 boys and a little baby girl. Well, she's not a baby girl anymore. She's almost 2.
She'll always be your baby.
She's almost 2. My goal as a father is that I'm going to raise my kids to love liberty. And yes. I'm going to tell them every day that, it doesn't matter what party you are, because that in the end doesn't matter. What matters is that when you're a father, when you're a mother, that you teach your children that liberty is a way of life. It's not a party. It's not a religion. It's just a way you want to live. It's almost like the Bible, do unto others as you have them do unto you, which is basically what the non-aggression principle is. Yeah, do you know what that is? Do no harm? Right. And live free. And anyone that tries to get between you and what you want to do, and anyone that wants to get between what you and your family wants to do, and you're not hurting anyone, it's wrong.
Right. I agree.
And I think if we're going to, I don't think any party is going to save this country. I don't think any party's going to save this country. I don't think any mayor, any president, I don't think anyone politically is going to save this country. What's going to save this country is fathers and mothers over generations teaching their kids that the establishment is not the answer. What everyone says around you isn't the answer. Usually it's the contrary. If the whole crowd is doing it, there's something wrong. Because we just live in a time of propaganda. We live in a time of, everyone trying to fit in, whether it's right or wrong. Yep. And you need to live by your principles, by your godly principles. Yes. So that's what's next for me. It's impacting my kids, impacting my Mount Joy area, maybe getting involved in the Republican Party and trying to find a way for them to not endorse bad candidates over and over and over and over again. That's what I want to do.
Awesome. That's inspiring. No, I love that. And, you mentioned propaganda. That's kind of why I'm doing this podcast, because I know you're a principled guy. I mean, I've always liked your views. I don't have to agree 100% with everything you've said, but you offer, a unique insight that we're not going to get by reading LNP or whatever people listen to for
To
news.
be clear, you're not going to get anything from reading OMP.
Yeah, that's a whole. I think I might do a whole show about that. But yeah, that's a whole can of worms. That I've had some. LNP has published a lot of my letters over the years, which I do appreciate, and sometimes they have good counterpoints, but they are not as even-handed as they claim to be. We'll just leave it at that.
If any media group, whether newspaper or video or news agency, if they try to tweak anything that anyone says or tweak any kind of news to fit a narrative, they're not news. They're not there to inform you. They're there for propaganda, and that's just the way it is.
Amen to that. And that's a good way to wrap up the show. Thanks everyone for listening. Thank you, Josh. All right.